Hello and welcome to Unboxing 3.0. Just before we get started on this third unboxing video, I want to have a disclaimer that I'm not trying to turn into a tech review channel, but I wanted to explain why we made what I feel is a very significant decision to move away from one set of technologies into another. And again, it's all for the purpose of ministry. We've been helping ministries embrace technology for over 20 years now. And we just think that there's been something very, very significant that's happened in the last few months in the personal computer space that I wanted to review. So today we'll be unboxing this MacBook Air. This is the first time that we've had any real Macintosh equipment in our ministry. We do have one piece of Apple equipment, but I've never had an Apple iPhone. I've never had any kind of Macintosh equipment. I've never had anything from Macintosh, and basically because I didn't like the ecospace. I didn't like the way everything was dependent on using iTunes, or you had to have an iCloud password, and if you forgot that password, then your device was locked out forever, and there was just some limitations that I just didn't enjoy. It seemed like the Android and Windows space was more wide open, and you could do more things. It didn't cost as much, so there was a lot of factors of why we essentially avoided all Apple products up until this point. So I wanted to make this video to really explain why we made such a drastic shift and decided to go into the Apple eco space, and really perhaps even someday have an iPhone or some other pieces of equipment that they're designing now, because there's a very significant change. So just as a backdrop, I've been in technology for, ever since I was in college. When I went to Arizona State University, our school was endowed by IBM with one of the state-of-the-art computer labs of the time, and we had the IBM XT, if anyone remembers that, with dual floppy drives, and the 8086 processor was inside of it, and then in my early career, I was working with 286 computers, 386 computers, 486 computers. I remember when the Pentium came out, which was really 586. So that whole field, or let's say that family of processors, the Intel processors, all built around what they call now the x86 architecture, this design, which really has another name, which it's for complex instruction set computing, CISC. So, I've known about Intel processors for a long, long time, and then so most of the equipment I had and I worked with in industry was of that family. But there was also another set of processors that came along. They were called the RISC processors, or reduced instruction set computers. So stay with me here. It's a little bit technical, but we'll get this box open real soon, and you'll share the joy of what we're doing and why we're excited about this change. So the RISC processors came out, and they were primarily in servers, and then they began to, there was one company in England called Acorn, and Acorn took the RISC processor and they began to develop them for smaller devices, and they wound up in the iPod and some of the other things. So basically this RISC processor was it was rebranded, if you would, the Acorn RISC machine, or ARM. So that's how it's mostly known today, as an ARM processor. And within Apple, it's known as the A number processors, so that you find those in the phones. So, with the backdrop of, there's different families of processors out there. So there was basically this ARM family, which was in iPhones, and this is a Nokia phone that I used for years and years when I lived in India, and this has it has an ARM processor in it, and so all of the early devices that we were using, whether it was an iPod or any kind of phone, Nokia or Ericsson, they all had these RISC processors under the brand name of ARM. So Apple had been using the ARM processors in their their computers. So you had like two families of computers. You had the Compaq line of computers, which later was bought out by HP. But Compaq was a very prevalent brand for many years, and Compaq had Intel processors, 286, 386, 486, Pentium. And then on the other side, you had the Macintosh computers from Apple, and they had the RISC processor, or the ARM processors inside of them, and they had they were running, they were really doing well in the graphics design field. So you were seeing a lot of, because they could handle a lot of complicated instructions very quickly. And so you were seeing things like the Jurassic Park movie and I believe Toy Story. They were all designed on machines that ran the ARM processors, right? So you had these kind of two families, the one that was more for the business and, crunching numbers and spreadsheets and word processing, and then you had this other that was more design. And so they kind of split off, and I was more over in the business side. So the ARM processors, they needed some more speed, so what Apple did was they partnered with Motorola and IBM, and all of the early Macintoshes had that, what they called the PowerPC chip, up until 2005. And then in 2005, Apple decided to use the Intel chip inside of Apple computers. So that's basically been the last 15 years of Intel processors inside of Apple devices. And what we're really talking about today is that Apple has decided to take the processor that was in their phones and put it inside their PC now. And so and this MacBook Air is the first generation. They're calling that the silicon chip, or the M1 chip. And that was the one we decided to buy. So the idea was that when, you wonder, how did I get this iPhone? Well, somebody who forgot their iPhone or their iCloud password gave me this phone and asked me if I could help them to unlock it. Well, of course I can't, but so I've got this iPhone 5. What happened was Apple decided to develop their own chips. So instead of taking the off-the-shelf chip from ARM, they decided to license the ARM technology and develop their own chips. So they put their first chip, that was called an A6, or it was actually called the Swift processor, came out around 2012. And that was in the iPhone 5. That's what this is here. And then the iPhone 5S had the next generation, which was the A7, and that was the first 64-bit chip. So actually Apple was the first one with a 64-bit chip inside of a phone. And then a couple years later, the RISC team, the ARM team, developed a RISC processor that was also 64-bit, and they sold that to Samsung. And so this is the Samsung Galaxy S4. So it's interesting because I actually own this phone. This was my second smartphone. The first one was an early version of Galaxy, and then I had this S4 was the first one, and this was the first 64-bit processor. So then, of course, Apple continued to evolve, and then the iPhone 6 came out, and so they began to just sequence, and then there was the A9, 10, 11, I don't know all the numbers, but they just kept getting faster and better, and so each release of the iPhone had a faster chip. So today we have the iPhone 12, and I don't have one with me, but the iPhone 12 has the A14 chip. So what happened then is that was the first chip, the A14, that was faster than the fastest Intel processor. So the fastest Intel processor is the i9, I believe it's the 10,900 chip or something. So the i9, and it uses a whole lot of electricity, and that was really the sticking point of the Intel design, is it needs like 125 watts of power to drive that chip, and then the A14 only uses 5 watts of power. So you had this amazing difference in battery life and things like that. So then what happened is the next chip after the A14 is the M1 silicon chip, and that chip here is in the MacBook Air. So we have this one that I purchased. It has 8 GB of memory and 512 GB of solid state drive, and I would have probably got a little bit more memory or a little bit more storage, but this is all they had available this time of year, being Christmas. So someday this might become my wife's, and I might get one with a slightly better configuration or specs. But we're really excited to tear into this. Again, this is the first time that I've opened an Apple product. I've seen their slick packaging before, other people's phones and packaging I've seen, but I've never had the privilege and pleasure of opening one myself, so I'm excited about that. But, we just wanted to explain to you why we decided to switch to this. And this was coming, really, I'd talked to my wife about it about a year ago, and I said, I'm seeing that this is the unit that it's replacing. This is an HP. This is a 17-inch HP. So this HP, the problem with this is the hardware is made by HP, and the processor is an i5, and so Intel hardware, HP motherboard and whatever, and then on this, is running Microsoft's Windows 10. So you have the hardware is being developed by one company, then you have the operating system is being developed by another company, and then let's say I want to run some Adobe software, Photoshop Elements or Premiere Elements or even the full suite. So then I've got the Adobe company is writing software, and they're writing it for Macintosh or for iPhone and iOS. They're writing it also for Intel and Windows, and then the hardware. So here you've got three different things that you're kind of pulling together that really nobody talked to each other about it. So you have the hardware by HP, the operating system by Microsoft, and then you've got the software by Adobe. So what's happened is, like, when I'm doing video editing on this machine, the processor is screaming and becomes so hot, and the fan comes on, it makes a whole bunch of noise, and then it slows down, and then all of this Windows background processes start hogging all of the CPU cycles, and then the software slows down. I've had the software crash. And so I was talking to my wife about it, and I said, this is the product of a mismatch. You've got one person writing the hardware or developing the hardware, another person doing the operating system, and another person doing the actual software that you're using. And that's the failure of this system, is like it just. And I began to look at this, and I said, okay, the hardware is made by Apple, the operating system, the iOS, is made by Apple, and the software possibly could be made by Apple. Like my plan is to use Final Cut Pro as the software on this machine. And so, but the only element that wasn't completely in sync was the processor. The processor was still this outlier, the Intel processor that had been, brought in to the early designs of the MacBook and MacBook Pro. So, but now, Intel, after 15 years, Apple has their own processor, the silicon, so it just became so obvious to me that I needed to make a move away from this, Frankenstein type situation where, everybody's got their finger in this thing, and it's not very efficient, it's not very fast. I mean, when I render videos, it takes like an hour to render something, and then everything takes long here, So I was watching some of the online reviews of this, and these are guys who have tech channels, and they were just, their jaws were dropping open, and they were going, this thing is stupid fast. I mean, they were like amazed, and there's no fan in this thing, so the processor is not overheating like this one does all the time. They were talking, and they were crunching it with programs and specs, like they were using big video files. I'm using 1080p right now. I'm hoping to get into 4K, but this thing couldn't handle 4K. It took like two hours to render a 4K video the other night, So I wanted something that I could get it done. I could, I would be able to get my work done. You want your workflow to be not expanded. You want it to be shrunk down, the things that you're doing that are taking the most time. So this book, this MacBook Air, I'm just about to open it. I know you're excited. I'm as excited as you are. It's going to be fun. And I'm just excited because I think this is the answer to what I've been looking for a long time. I mean, and some people have said that this silicon chip is the most significant thing that's happened in desktop computing in the last 10 to 12 years. I mean, in the last decade, by far, this is the most significant change. And I know it's going to change completely the Apple line of products. They're dropping Intel, and they're going to go to these chips from top to bottom. I think the performance that we're going to get is just crazy good. So without further ado, we are opening our MacBook Air, and let's get a look at it. So we pulled the pull string here that was on the back side, and just stripping off the plastic and getting ready to do our unboxing 3.0, and here we go. So MacBook Air, here we go. Excited? I'm excited. Okay. And by the way, I bought the space gray. When I was buying this, there was a lady that was there, and she was shopping price, right? So she was also looking. It was around Christmas time, and went over to Best Buy, and I was waiting in line. They had several people ahead of me there. So the lady that was right in front of me, she was also looking at a MacBook Air, because all of the Intel versions, the MacBook Air that has the i3 and the MacBook Air that had the i5, they're all on sale, and they're like $200, $300, $400, $500 less than this one. So they were thinking to buy one of those, and so I knew I wasn't going to buy that one. I was coming specifically for the M1. And so I just waited, I was listening to them. It was two sisters. They were talking to each other, and I was like, so they were deciding strictly based on price. And I said, listen, I'm going to get an M1. I just want you to know why. I'm getting it because I'm going to do video editing, and I want something that can handle it. And I believe this hardware is going to be adequate, and it's going to be able to handle the little bit of video editing that I want to do and the post-production that I want to do. So it seemed like their goal was not video editing. They just wanted a cool-looking laptop that they could, take with them to school or work or whatever they were doing. So here we go. We're coming in. This is where the first fingerprints get on your computer. So there it is. Beautiful jacket here. We'll put that aside. And it says it was designed by Apple in California. By the way, this review is in California. So we have some official MacBook Air pair of instructions, and then this power cube. And of course, these will vary from country to country. Being in US and on 120 volts, we're going to have one that looks like this. And then the infamous power cable. And this, of course, is a USB-C cable. So I'm going to just look at the back of this here. So we've got two ports on this side. We've got one headphone jack or some kind of audio jack over there. Nothing on the back. It's very light, of course. And let's open up this. So one of the ports is going to have to be used. One of the USB ports is going to have to be used to charge the unit when it's time to charge. So we're going to have to keep that in mind. And so what I did was I've already bought a couple of add-ons. You said, well, you haven't even got the thing open yet and you're buying add-ons. Well, everyone knows that Apple has been cutting back on the number of ports that they're putting on their devices, so I anticipated that, and I bought this little docking station here. It's called a hyperdrive 9-in-1, so I get 9 different ports, and it only takes one of the USB-C, and since I only have 2, I guess that would be all that you'd want to have taken up. Okay, so here we have network jack, looks like an audio jack, another USB-C, looks like some USB 3.0 jacks are here, then an HDMI port. So as I understand that one of the limitations of this computer is that you can only attach one external monitor to it. So I think I can live with that. You know, I think I can live with just a single USB external device. So I'm not too concerned about that. And then the second thing that I bought was USB to just a straight off USB to C. And my thought was to have this be an external hard drive, that I would just keep an external hard drive attached here so I can offload some of the video editing that we do, the large files. So that's it. Looks like we've got all the pieces here. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on for everyone to see. I mean, everyone wants to see if this thing comes charged or not. I'm sure there's a little bit of residual power, but other than that, we'll have to plug it in and get it charged up. But here we go, 13-inch MacBook Air, and let's see here. Okay, you can tell I haven't done much. Oh, it plays a song for us. And so just so you can see, it has a protective screen here, screen protector. And it came up and it's announced itself to the world. And oh boy, this is it. We're getting the full experience here. Let me see. Oh, there it is. So we've got the selection.
To use English as the main language, press the return key.
Okay, I'll press the return key. English will be, now you have English UK, Australian, Indian, and we know those are all significantly different. They forgot Scottish, that one you can hardly understand. So here we go, we're committed to English as our medium, and then it's asking which country I'm in. United States is selected first, so I hit return. It looks like it had 2/3 battery. It seems to know it's Sunday. It seems to know the time. But we're still trying to figure it out in some ways. So anyway, I won't bore you with all the details. Accessibility. I won't bore you too much further with this, but what's going to happen is I'm going to figure out how to use Mac iOS for the first time. I'll probably watch 100 videos on, beginner Mac iOS. I heard it's, counterintuitive to Windows, but, I'm open to new things. I want to learn, So I'm excited, MacBook Air. I'm excited that, we're going to purchase and download the Final Cut Pro, so there'll be some learning curve there to master, pretty much a professional program to do our video production. So we're trying to take our video channel up. This is all for the purpose of ministry. I've chosen this, I chose to buy this computer for ministry to take it up to another level. We try to get 1% better with each upload, and everything we're doing, we'd like it to be a little bit better than it was before. So, so we hope that this has been beneficial to you, that there was some aspect of it that's helpful, and we're excited. This was Unboxing 3.0, and we're getting into launching a new season of using Apple products, and hopefully enhancing the delivery of our content to the audiences that we're trying to serve, with trying to get the word out in any and every medium available. So that's it. This is Harold Ritter with Harold Ritter Ministries. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks.